It's a little different, I'm sorry. I'm calling the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome those who are viewing this meeting by internet. And before I proceed with the roll call, I'm going to ask Mr. Gravier to please just remind us how people can submit comments or questions. Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, first, this meeting can be viewed on 2 different platforms. Our traditional platform that you can find on the town's homepage at townofbethanybeach.com. You simply click on the government tab, go to the left side of that page, and click on the live video broadcast, and you'll pull this meeting up live via the town's website. Or you can go to YouTube, and at youtube.com, Bethany Beach Gov, capital B, capital B, capital G for Gov, Bethany Beach Gov, youtube.com. And you have to subscribe to YouTube to be able to view it on YouTube. If you have any questions regarding any item on this agenda, you may submit those questions while the meeting is ongoing at questions@townofbethanybeach.com, all lowercase. Again, questions@townofbethanybeach.com. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gravier. And I'll just remind people how we'll do this. Following the council discussion of each item on the agenda and prior to a vote on the item, I'll ask Mr. Gravier if there are any comments or questions on that particular item from members of the public. If not, we'll proceed to the vote. And if anyone watching has a question or a comment not related to any item on the agenda, I'd ask that you take the time now to type it, since these questions or comments will be recognized following the financial report given by our treasurer, Mr. Morris. So I'll call, as I call the roll, I'll ask each member of council or staff to raise their hands so that those watching from home get a better idea of where they're seated and who is who. So if you would raise your hands as I call your name. Mr. Healy? Here. Mr. Shepley? Here. Mr. Morris? Mr. Kilmer?
Here.
Mr. Fry is here at, you can see him at home, yes. Mr. Gravier? Here. Mrs. Denault? John Apple, our Assistant Town Manager, Will Wharton. And we have Molly and Andrea Brocius watching from upstairs, and they'll be taking minutes. So before we get started on the meeting, if you'll all stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And as I wrote to you this morning, the town manager has asked that we pull from today's agenda and reschedule for our March meeting the second reading of the 3 items under old business, which are personal wireless facilities, placement of wireless facilities within the public rights of way, and a draft resolution. Is everyone okay with that? Do you have a motion? Okay.
Second.
Okay. And we, everybody in favor of approving the agenda with that amendment? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Good. Mr. Fry? Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on January 22nd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the minutes of the public hearing. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Approval of the minutes of the workshop special meeting held on January 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the financial report. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. This report covers the budget through January 31st of 2021. We are now 83% through our fiscal year 2021. On the operating revenue side, we've collected 90.9% of the budgeted revenue compared to 104.9% at this time last year. On the expense side, we've expended 74.5% of our budgeted amount compared to 82% expended about this time last year. Recognizing that this report is subject to audit, I respectfully move that the council accepts and approve the unaudited report.
Have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Fry? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a delay.
That's okay, thank you. Before we proceed, does any council member have any announcements or any comments? Okay. Mr. Gravier, have we received any public comments or questions related to anything not on the agenda? Okay, then we'll go on. The first item under reports is report from the Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. The Budget and Finance Committee was scheduled to meet on February 17th, but we had technical difficulties, so we had to reschedule for Thursday, February 25th at 10 a.m. The committee will review the results of the current fiscal year and the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. We are projecting that the town will end the year $125,000 under budget in revenue and $580,000 under budget in operating expenses. The town also has received $167,247 in assistance from the CARES Act. The new budget for the fiscal year 2022, which starts on April the 1st, will be discussed in detail. We are budgeting for the normal summer season, hopefully that the pandemic will continue or will not continue and ease as the vaccinations are distributed. Townwide revenues are currently budgeted for $10,561,000 for operating cost. Revenue. Operating costs are $9,338,000, and the capital budget and debt review is $1,811,000. There are no tax or fee increases in the draft budget for the coming year. We will expect to discuss a trash fee increase and water increases next year. Both are on the schedule at a 5-year cycle for adjustments. That's my report.
Any questions? Mr. Healy, could you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Jerry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I had put down that the meeting was on Wednesday, but it's next Thursday.
Next Thursday on the 25th.
Okay, thank you.
25th.
Before we proceed, Mr. Fry, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. And when I raise my hand, it takes 2 seconds before you see it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. If you can't hear us, let us know. Okay, the next item on
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the charter and ordinance. That's me.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is a report from Charter and Ordinance Review Committee. We met on February 3rd by Zoom. And we welcome Mr. Lee Bunting as a participant. His appointment to the committee is being considered at today's meeting, but we wanted him to join and see if he wanted to get out of it at the last minute if he didn't like us or whatever, but he contributed. He was very good. We talked about 2 issues. The first is a possible amendment to Section 26-4 of Bethany Beach Town Code that would establish a permanent voter registration, eligibility registration list for non-property owner residents and those residents who hold property in an LLC or a corporation. At the present time, these people have to register to vote each year. We discussed additional revisions to the draft that would better address our situation in Bethany Beach, and we hope to bring it to the council next month. The second was a possible amendment to Chapter 223 relating to the beach of Bethany Beach Town Code which would address public safety considerations in the digging of holes on the beach. And this item was brought to us by John Apple, our Assistant Town Manager. We had a very informative discussion with Mr. Apple, and apparently the beach ambassadors have brought this issue to his attention because of large holes being left unfilled on the beach after people leave. These pose a danger to personal safety, as we saw in Ocean City not too long ago, as well as to the machinery that clean and smooth the sand. Mr. Apple provided us with sample ordinances from other beach communities as a way of showing us how they handle it, and he showed us, or told us really, we discussed what would be most helpful to him and to his enforcement people. So we're going to be working on that along with Mr. Apple, and we hope to bring these drafts to council for the review in the next month or two. And that completes my report. If there are any questions? The next item on the agenda is a report from the Stormwater and Tidal Flooding Committee. Mr. Fry.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the brand-new Stormwater and Tidal Flooding Committee had its first meeting yesterday on Zoom. As the title suggests, we are interested in flooding caused by storms, as well as sunny day flooding caused by high tides. The committee members are Mark Bauernhuber, Ron Califf, Jack Gordon, John Kobe, and Chip Smith. We expect flooding to only increase as storm severity increases and sea level rise continues in Bethany Beach. At our first meeting, our town manager and assistant provided a very comprehensive history of town flooding, the town's geography, the many studies of the situation, and the current tidal gauges available on the town website. The latest study, received in 2020, holds promise that the combination of a bladder dam at the confluence of our Loop Canal and the Assawaman Canal, plus the tidal gate on the Fred Hudson Bridge, can prevent most flooding in the town without affecting our neighbors. The next step is to verify this result with more detailed two-dimensional mapping, and the council will vote on that proposal today. The committee looks forward to working with the town on future proposals and concerns. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. The next item on the agenda is report from the Telecommunications Committee. Mr. Shepley?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, Council, the Telecommunications Committee held our initial meeting on February 12, 2021 via Zoom. All committee members were present, along with Cliff Gravier, the town manager, John Apple, the assistant town manager, and Molly Daisy, the town clerk. Since this was our first meeting and the entire committee is new, we began by giving a brief introduction of ourselves, including background and our connection to Bethany Beach. The week before our committee meeting, the town held a Zoom meeting for all members of the three new committees to introduce key town personnel and operations of the town. This meeting was very well received by our committee members, and the town received many positive comments. Cliff and John then presented a summary of the current situation in the two main areas of our concentration. The first being mobile cell phone service, including cell towers and antenna placement. Verizon has been granted permits and installed multiple 5G-enabled antennas in the boardwalk and business areas to improve their service and coverage in those areas. The second area of interest to us is television, internet, and telephone service offered to our businesses and residential homes. This is currently offered by Mediacom, with Comcast service coming in the next 18 to 24 months. We were informed of Mediacom's efforts to replace aging equipment and Comcast's progress to date. Comcast has laid fiber optic cables in the downtown business district and are currently proceeding on Route 26 west of Route 1. After much discussion, questions, and answers, the following action items were identified. 1, we will investigate developing some education materials that we can provide to residents to improve their current services. This may include instructions, tips, potential equipment, etc. 2, Cliff and John will see if it would be possible and beneficial to communicate updates on Comcast progress with their installation, as well as any future developments with Mediacom. This could be done on the town's website with links on the BBLA website. And 3, it was suggested the town should explore other methods of 5G service delivery in Bethany Beach with vendors. The committee discussed forming the committee discussed forms of 5G service that would not require a massive deployment of 5G antennas, but still satisfy the community's needs for 5G service. We will form a small subgroup of our committee members to discuss alternative 5G service with the major telecom providers in the region. This subgroup is being formed, and the town manager is already in the process of trying to arrange those meetings. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Shepley. Are there any questions for either Mr. Shepley or Mr. Fry? Okay. I would point out that I watched both meetings, telecommunications and the stormwater and tidal flooding committees, and I was very impressed with both the meetings and also with the caliber of new people that we're seeing coming on to these committees. So thank you very much for the good work. The next item on the agenda is a report from our town manager, Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, Council, our beach replenishment is complete. There is only one small piece of piping left on the beach, and it'll be removed here in the next work week. Beach grass has been planted, fence has been installed as needed, and the project is over. They have cleared their site.
Excuse me, Mr. Gravier, could you get closer to the microphone?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Well, thank you. I'll start over. Beach replenishment is complete. Right now, the company is out of the area. They have moved offshore. They will be back next week to pick up the one remaining piece of pipe that's on the beach. Their work is completed as it relates to the dune fence, and their work is completed also for dune grass planting. Our project is over at this point in time. The Water Department has had a number of complaints, received complaints, as we have in my office, regarding the amount of mold on our water towers. It's unsightly, and it's something the neighbors are concerned about. We, on a periodic basis, we have the towers cleaned, and we're going to have to tighten those periods because these wet, damp winters are creating more of a bloom of mold than we're used to here. So we have just let a contract last month for the cleaning of the towers, and the towers will be cleaned when the contractor is relatively sure that the town won't suffer from a significant freeze that causes safety and equipment problems for his company. The parking department is about to mail out our residential parking permits a little bit ahead of their normal schedule. They'll be mailed out in the next few weeks in 600 batches of 600 rather, and kudos for them for getting this out of the way so early in our year. Seasonal hiring. In this year's budget, you'll see a significant hike in seasonal employment cost. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that we try to keep up with our neighboring and competing towns, and there is real competition, especially for seasonal police officers and lifeguards. So we try to keep up with the rates that those communities pay on an hourly basis. But the main driver is that this year I have asked managers to overhire based on our experience last year with COVID. Last year we saw seasonal police officers leave us, resign, because they did not like the nature of their work because it involved enforcement of the mask mandate. We were fortunate that John Apple and Apple's Marauders were able to come to the rescue and do some work for us and hire some additional people to do code enforcement. And we all remember that at least one point last year, we had 18 guards off duty simultaneously under COVID quarantine. So with that in mind, and so in an attempt to get a little bit ahead of the curve, we're going to try to overhire. that may not go as well as we would like with seasonal police officers. For those that were on the governor's call earlier in the week, you heard Rehoboth bemoan the fact that they're having a real issue. They have only brought on board about a quarter of the number of officers they normally do at this time of year, and it is because of COVID. So we hope to get to the 17 officers that we hope to hire, but right now we are far away from that. As it relates to summer, we are planning and budgeting, as you'll see as the budget is reviewed, for summer to be as a normal summer, as a summer pre-COVID, if you will. And we're scheduling bandstand performances, we're planning for movies, we're planning bonfires, but we remember how this worked last year, and I know that we'll probably be back here asking the council to consider changes unless there is a dramatic change in what is happening with COVID. But for planning purposes, we're thinking it will be a normal summer. We hope it'll be a normal summer, but we're doubtful. I ask that any of you that have any concerns for any of our various events, possibly Mr. Fry will want to come back and have a discussion in the next month or two with the council regarding the parade. I will probably be back shortly or sooner rather than later regarding fireworks, because we have that contract on our desk now. But again, planning, funding as normal, but we know changes are coming. Any changes that you think you might want to have us think about going into the summer, please let us know so we can put them on the agenda in March and April and resolve them before the summer is here. The Cultural Historic Affairs Committee, CHAC, has finally received their workup from the person who was developing the displays for our museum. The CHAC chair, along with Julie Molesky, met with this vendor this past week, and the vendor has provided a portfolio of what she's proposing for the museum. That portfolio is in the council mailroom on the council table in that room for those of you that would like to stop in during the week and next few weeks and take a look at it. The funding for that project and the completion of those displays is actually in our budget and will be on your March agenda. And one final note, Mr. Morris wrote me earlier this month and asked if the council, if we might want to consider distributing our report a little bit differently, and that instead of me walking down here at the very last minute and handing you the report, I send it to you just before the council meeting at the very last minute via email. So for two purposes. One, that it cuts back on the amount of paper we're generating, and the second purpose would be that you would have a file that you can maintain of all the reports and have them far more easily accessible than they are now. So right now you have the paper report. We would have scanned and sent it to you today, but we are having technical difficulties. But we will do that probably early next week. Please open it up on your computers, see if you think that's a better way for us to proceed here in the future, and email me and let me know. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Are there any questions from Mr. Gravier or any comments? Mr. Shepley?
Cliff, I think I'm correct in saying there's some additional work that needs to be done in the town park in the spring coming up. Can you, including maybe the revisions of the sign, can you give us an update on that?
Right now, especially because of our budget considerations that we'll go over in more detail at our first budget hearing, but because of the constraints of last year with revenue generation and the purchase of the Walcheck property, we're being fairly conservative. So we're not going ahead with any work on the sign. We're not proposing that. Well, I think we'll do that if our resources come back, revenues come back this summer. Any other additions right now are nothing's really in the works. I've had a very brief discussion with the mayor, about the possibility of taking a look at the pavers surrounding the pavilion and creating a memorial area with those pavers around the pavilion. We will explore that. I'm sure it will cause Brett Warner to pull what hair he has out, but I think it's time we do that. We had initially spoken about creating a memorial walkway at the entrance to the park, but that may be years away, or we may never consider that depending on what happens with traffic and the flow of pedestrian traffic in the community. So I think we'll take a look at that memorial area or dedication, whatever we would call it. Would ask for people to make a donation and be able to put a paver recognizing a friend, a loved one, or their own commitment to the community. That's the only thing we have in the immediate works. Thank you. Sir?
I had one question, Mr. Gravier, about the replacing of any of the dead vegetation. I noticed there were, on the hill and back of the homes on Gibson, there are some evergreens that appear to have died. I'm not sure they are, though.
As part of our ongoing contract and the warranty with any new plantings that have died or look suspect will be replaced. Another project that is in the works that isn't specific to the park, Mr. Shepley, is a project dealing with drainage at the western end of the property, but that'll not affect the park at all.
Thank you, Mr. Gravier. Mr. Fry, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Thank you. Okay, there's no old business on the agenda, so we'll go to the first item of new business, and that is the consideration of an ordinance amending section 425-16 concerning the fence restrictions within the town of Bethany Beach. And this is for Mr. Kilmer.
Yes, thank you. First of all, because it's a change in our ordinance, this doesn't require a first reading. I mean, this is it. You don't have to wait for a first and second reading. It's been properly advertised, and we can vote on it today because it is changing the zoning. That's our charter allows us to do that. On top of that, the whole purpose of this amendment or rewriting is twofold. There were some within the code. There was some ambiguity about how do you measure, from where do you measure the height of a fence, and one of the ambiguities was do you measure from the ground, or if it's sitting on a knee wall, do you measure from the knee wall? So ultimately, that's all been resolved here in the code. The other aspect of it was we wanted to consolidate. There was a lot of terminology that was spread all through the code, and we wanted to put in all there's terminology like arbors and trellises all in one spot within the, so it'd be a lot easier to find and follow if a person is interested in that. So that was the two main focuses of the ordinance that we wanted to change. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that that we adopt the amended for the section 425-16, the regulation of perimeter fences.
Second.
Any discussion? I would just point out that we did not receive any comments about this
None.
ordinance, either at the public hearing or following that.
No, we have not.
Okay, these are not substantive, these are minor clarifications.
Yes, but really to focus on getting rid of ambiguities. So I don't want people to read it one way and somebody else reads it another way. So this way it's been resolved. These are kind of things you develop as codes are looked at and as things happen within the town. Mm-hmm. And while, oh yeah, I can see where they're thinking like that, but that was not our intent.
Okay, we have it's been moved and seconded. There is no more discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Fry.
All right, the next item under new business, discussion, consideration, and possible vote on proposed changes to the town council procedure and protocol manual. Mayor.
Okay, I sent a copy of the revisions that we discussed at the workshop in January to everyone, and these basically incorporate the revisions suggested by Mr. Kilmer and myself. And I don't think we didn't have much of a discussion about it at the meeting. I don't think there was anything that anybody has gotten in touch with me since then or before then. Most of them are minor changes, they're nothing substantive. So with that in mind, I'd move that we approved the proposed changes to the Town Council Procedure and Protocol Manual as presented here today.
Second.
Oh, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the proposed changes to the protocol manual, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible vote on the proposed changes to the committee guidelines. Mr. Shepley.
Thank you, Mayor. While the current guidelines allow non-citizens of the town to serve on committees, they are prohibited from voting on those committees. We had a discussion of this in January at our meeting, and I don't think it's necessary that I take a lot of time to present my reasonings again. I gave them to you in writing and spoke verbally about them. I do just want to remind everybody that I am in favor of allowing non-citizens to serve on town committees, primarily if they have a background or an area of interest that is attractive to that particular committee. So I'm in favor of that. I am comfortable with the fact that if they are committee members, I think it is only proper to allow them to vote on those committee issues. And I would like to make a motion to accomplish that by deleting the first sentence on page 2 of the committee guidelines manual, item H, that reads, current members must be citizens of the town of Bethany Beach in order to be a full voting member of any committee. My motion would delete that sentence.
Do I have a second for purposes of discussion? Second. Do I have any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Kilmer.
First of all, I don't like the term citizen in this particular case. I don't like the term citizen. I think it should be property owners.
That, just to point out, to clarify, that's the definition that's given in the guidelines.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm sure the guidelines were basically modeled after other towns where only citizens of the town can vote. So I think that terminology was just transferred over. Obviously, many of the coastal communities have a very different approach of allowing non-resident property owners to vote within our community. We currently have 7 people who serve on our committees that are non-residents, but they are property owners of our town. I have no problem about them being part of it. I have no problem about them voting. I do have a problem of having somebody who comes in as an expert in a field, who is neither a property owner or a resident of the town, have the same vote as somebody who pays the taxes in our community. They're there for a reason of sharing their expertise, but I think their expertise should be the limit of their participation and not decide how an item should be. They have the right of voting on something when they really aren't part of our town. That's my point.
Any comments?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about this one, but I guess I've had many committees in my work career, and we did pull in consultants who were paid to give their opinions. In this case, you have a volunteer who is spending time and effort to upgrade whatever committee they're on. And as a result of that, I think that they should be given a chance to vote. They're only one vote on a committee that might be made up of 5 or 6 or 10 people. And then finally, it's the council who has the authority to accept or not accept these changes. So that the end result comes to us. So I don't see it's a major problem to have a person who puts the effort in have a say.
May I respond? Well, I agree from this perspective. The person who is the expert in the field that is volunteering them time know that they were not being paid for this, that they were a citizen who wanted to be involved in improvement. I just think there could be a slippery slope if you take this past this. I know the town council has the final say, but at the same time, I think it could look bad within our community of we actually having non-citizens vote on could be key issues within our community.
Mr. Healy, do you have anything to add?
I have to agree here with Mr. Kilmer. I'm just uncomfortable with the non-citizens voting. I remember when I came on originally on committees here, I was not a full-time resident, I was an owner. And I thought, gee willikers, that's good, and I liked it, but I did have a stake in what was going on, and I felt strongly about that. But if I did not have ownership, or I was not a citizen living here as a resident, I'm not so sure that I would have had the same feeling. I'm just not comfortable with it, I'll put it to you that way. Thank you.
Mrs. Denal?
I'm on the fence. I agree with both of the, both sides. But people who volunteer to come in and give their time and are subject matter experts, I don't see the problem with them being non-resident members of the community, of the committee. So I guess I'm in favor.
Voting members or members of the committee?
Voting members.
Okay. Mr. Fry?
I think I agree with, well, first of all, I don't feel that committee members who are not paying taxes should make votes in the committee. And I do have one of those type of people on my committee, and I asked him, do you care if you vote? He said, no, I just want to help out with the parade. So I don't see a need to do this.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you hear me? Yeah.
Mayor, I'd be curious on communities that aren't coastal communities who only allow participation of residents within their local government, whether they would ever consider having a non-resident vote on one of their committees.
I do know that Rehoboth Beach recently considered this. Along the same lines, they had a discussion, and I don't know if they've passed it, but it was along the lines of committee guidelines clarifying that non-property owners, they also include business people in terms of being able to be on committees, but anyone who's not a resident or a property owner can be a member of a committee if they have subject matter expertise and are asked to be on for that reason, but they cannot vote. My own, since everybody else has gone, I would just express my own opinion. And I can understand that, you know, the reason why you would want to be able to do that. My feeling is that non-property owners or non-residents should not be on a committee unless there is a need for their expertise. And if you're providing expertise and then you're voting on your opinion, it seems to me to be a little bit of a conflict there. I can understand where you're coming from on that, but I think if someone is asked to be on a committee under those circumstances, as Mr. Fry has expressed, they would understand that they're being asked to give their expertise, but they're not going to vote. And he said that the people on his committee were perfectly understanding of that. But that's my opinion. Mr. Shepley.
Just to add to a little bit of what Mr. Morris said, not only does the committees advise and assist the town, so the committees themselves, for the most part, aren't making decisions. The council, and in some instances, the town itself makes those decisions. The committees, just make recommendations, makes advisements, project things, etc. But the council not only has the final say in the decision-making, we have the final say on who's on a committee. So committee members are approved by the council. We all know that. I know you know that. But my point being is if we feel comfortable, if the chairperson of the committee feels comfortable enough with that non-citizen, I understand your reluctance to like that term, but that's the term that's used in the guidelines. With a non-citizen being on the committee and the council approves that person, membership of the committee, and the council approves decisions or recommendations from that committee, I personally think, as I've mentioned, I know I'm repeating myself, it's just the right thing to do. Don't ask people to dedicate their time and service and effort and attendance at meetings and then not allow them to vote on the committee matters.
See, I don't think it's that important because they're being asked to serve on the committee and they're given the terms under which they're serving. I think if someone is generous enough to do that, they don't care if they're going to vote or not vote. And I said once before, if someone from another local community asked me to serve on a committee because of whatever expertise might be helpful to them, I wouldn't care. It would be enough for me to give my opinion and not have a vote on what I've opined on.
I understand. I respect that opinion, and I'm arguing more from the position of it's just the right thing to do. Not that no one has even contacted me asking for this change to be made. I just think it's the right thing in this day and age to do to allow someone to be a full-fledged member of the committee. Anybody that we deem worthy of serving on that committee.
I have a final thought, something that you said earlier, which I think is very appropriate here. A person who comes in to give expert information, testimony to a committee, why would they not vote for the change? Because they're the one offering it. So it's a foregone conclusion to that point. So why did they have to vote? Because, I mean, the vote would be, I approve. If not, then why would they be there?
And just another thing too, our staff members are subject matter experts, and that's why they're on the committees as well.
I'll stop talking after this. We all draw the line in the sand at a different point. And I do draw the line in the sand personally for the staff members not being able to vote. I think they are in a different category. But my line in the sand includes non-citizens being able to vote.
As a point of interest, do we have any clue how many people are on committees that are not residents?
We do have a couple. Yeah.
No,
And
I don't think there's 7.
No, there's 7.
No. I don't think there's 7.
Non-citizens? I don't think
Well,
so.
Non-resident property owners.
Yeah, but non-citizen, I think there's 3.
Yeah. No, there's 7 non-resident property owners.
But that's not who we're
That's not who we're
discussing.
I know.
That's not what we're discussing.
I know it isn't,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
I'm just,
There's another point, and I'd like to include it in another section of these guidelines, is that when anybody is applying to be on a committee, they must provide their Bethany Beach address. And it has to be within the corporate limits because there are people on the list, a couple who have a 19930, and one lives north of town, up in one of those communities up there, and you could live in Sea Colony or South Bethany and still have a 19930 address.
But do we know how many?
It's only a couple.
I think there's 3, I think, at least a couple of months ago.
And following up on what Mr. Fry said, not anything against the 4th of July committee, but the 4th of July committee does not have something that's going to affect the community, something like with flooding or communications or something like that. There's a difference on that committee.
What's,
Well, Bruce made a comment, he has several members that are, okay, but the parade is a one-day affair, and it's not like something that really affects the community on long term.
Yeah, it doesn't have that kind of impact, yeah.
no, I agree with that. So does that mean then that if somebody is on a committee, a non-resident, where it affects the town more substantially, they should be able to vote on it?
That's what we're talking about. Yes.
I mean, is that
yeah.
your opinion?
Yes, that's my
Where
opinion.
it doesn't
Well,
affect the
we haven't
town?
voted on opinions yet, but yes, that's my opinion.
So where it doesn't...
Again, Mayor, if I can just, I just want to make sure anybody that's watching this, we're not confusing them between a non-resident property owner and a non-citizen.
I got
We're talking about non-citizens here, people who do not live in Bethany Beach or own property in Bethany Beach, but that have been confirmed to sit on a committee, but currently aren't allowed to vote on those committees.
Are we finished discussing this, or do we have...
Just like to clarify, Ms. Hardman, I'd just like to clarify that what we're talking about here, we're talking about non-citizen, non-resident people on the committee being allowed to vote yes or no. And my understanding, my feeling still is no.
Right. Yeah, we'd be talking about, for example, someone from Ocean View being asked to be on a committee and being allowed to vote, whether or not we want that.
My response is no, because as a council member, I don't want to have to track every time we have something comes up, track whether the committee, you know, who knows, and does that mean there's no limit on the committee members being residents or non-residents?
Is there any other comment? Well, hearing none, shall we call for a vote on the motion? The motion on the floor is to change...
Delete.
Go ahead.
The motion is to delete the first sentence on page 2, item H, that currently reads, "Committee members must be citizens of the town of Bethany Beach in order to be a full voting member of any committee." Delete that sentence.
And we had it has been moved and seconded, so we will call for a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Shepley's motion to delete that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Okay, the nays have it. Thank you, Mr. Shepley. Can I then propose an alternative to that to clarify it?
I'm sorry.
I was going to, and I did send out something because this wasn't, that whole section wasn't very clear about non-citizens being able to be on committees. So if it would be, do you think it's appropriate right now if I bring up an alternative to clarify that?
I think it's appropriate,
Okay.
and I think you know I have 2 more motions.
I do, but
we
those
could do
two,
one
we
at a
agree.
time.
Yeah, we agree with
Yep,
those. So I thought
that's
maybe
fine.
subject matter, we'd get rid of this one first. And I had sent this around that if Mr. Shepley's change is not accepted, I would move the following amendment to clarify paragraph H. And the clarification would be, which I think was the original intent, but you may disagree. Committee members must be citizens of the town of Bethany Beach, period. And delete that following that. However, subject to council approval, a non-citizen with expertise in matters within a committee's purpose and scope of work may be invited to join a committee as a non-voting member to provide input on such matters. Town staff may serve on committees as non-voting members. And I move approval of that. For discussion purpose?
Second. It's just a little difficult to, I'd have to read it a couple times to be able to, to fully comprehend it. I just can't vote on that right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll defer this.
I would prefer
Okay.
that we have an opportunity to read it and study a little bit,
Okay,
rather than, it's hard to, especially when you do it on a microphone, understand
right,
the
okay.
content. That's my opinion.
Oh, you didn't get a copy of this?
No, I did not.
Oh. I'm sorry, we can defer this for the next time then, too.
No, if everybody else has a copy,
Mr. Morris?
Oh, it's fine with me to defer it.
all
I
right,
guess,
fine. I defer, fine.
I guess that I would add that anybody who volunteers, they're going to have to know up front that they're not going to be able to vote.
Right.
Somehow you've got to make that clear.
And I think this clarifies that,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah. This is, Mr. Fry, do you have anything to say?
No, I didn't understand that last conversation, but it's okay.
Okay, then why don't we just defer that, because rather than, for another time, rather than, I withdraw the motion. Okay? And then, Mr. Shepley?
Thank you, Mayor. At our public meeting last month, there was some discussion of the definitions of a couple of words. After doing some research, I believe the current words in question are appropriate. And specifically, we talked about the word guideline, which the definition is any guide or indication of a course of action. Bruce, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're very clear.
Thank you. A guideline, any guide or indication of a course of action, I believe that's perfect definition of what we're talking about here, committee guidelines. And the other word that came up was accommodate. And the definition of accommodate is to adjust something to meet someone's needs. And as you'll see in my motion, I think the word accommodate is appropriate in the guidelines, and I'll keep it in the guidelines. You look confused.
Is that your second proposed change?
I'm getting there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You know I'm a little long-winded. The current guidelines state that, quote, non-resident citizens, end quote, should be accommodated as much as possible. My proposal would clarify that all committee members should be accommodated where appropriate. Specifically, I make a motion to change the second sentence on page 3, item J, to read, quote, committee members should be accommodated as much as possible if such accommodation does not interfere with the workings of the town and its staff, end quote. Again, all I'm doing is taking out the term non-resident citizens and specifying that all committee members should be accommodated where appropriate. That is my motion.
Second.
I have no issue with that at all, personally. So.
You what?
I have no issue. I think it's the proper thing to do.
Do you have anything to say? Okay, Mr. Fry, do you have any comments?
No, I'll second the motion, though.
Okay. Okay, so hearing no further comments, all those in favor of the change, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Mr. Shepley?
Last one, Mayor. The third motion is to actually clarify and more accurately describe the timing of certain actions relative to our organizational meeting, the council organizational meeting. And specifically, I make a motion. Now this, bear with me, because this is kind of could be two motions. It's two changes in one motion. I move that we replace the first and second sentence on page 2 under term with, quote, and you have these in front of you, by the way, quote, normally committee chairs shall be appointed during the town council organizational meeting. Committee appointments expire annually, except those with multi-year limits at the close of business on the day before the next regular town council meeting after the organizational meeting. Committee members shall be appointed annually during that same meeting, end quote. And then continuing my motion as it relates to this, replacing the first sentence on page 4, the last paragraph with, quote, these guidelines shall be reconfirmed annually at the next regular town council meeting after the organizational meeting, end quote. And just for clarification, all I'm doing is taking out specific months where we have meetings and replacing that with either the organizational meeting or the next meeting after the organizational meeting, which refers to what we're actually doing today. Thank you. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Overall, I totally agree with this. I would just I like to add one word where it says multi-year limits. I like to put multi-year term limits.
It should just be multi-year terms,
Yeah,
not limits.
or multi-year terms.
I think that's,
Yes, because there might be confusion of what that means. Multi-year limits,
I don't have any problem with that.
multi-year terms.
Good upgrade.
anyone else? Mr. Fry, any comments?
Fine.
Okay. Okay, the motion's on the floor and it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Is that yours?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepley.
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to add two of them, and did everybody get what I sent out yesterday? Okay, you didn't? Okay. All right, well then maybe why don't we postpone it until the next, I was going to ask for, we've had, in order that Mr. Fry doesn't have to come to the council every year and ask for an exception to certain parts of this, I just wanted to include something now that would say that, the 4th of July Parade Committee, in order to fulfill its unique role more efficiently, the following paragraphs of this section do not apply. And they have to do with the ones that say how many people are on the committee and whether or not they're residents, because I think in his, whether or not they're citizens, because I think
That's a whole different.
it doesn't apply to them. So if, I've already run it by Mr. Fry and he's in favor of it, so I'll make the motion to approve that now,
Yes.
okay?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Yes.
All right, you're exempt, Mr. Fry.
You got a,
Well, thank you.
Mayor,
you
I
got some
just,
comments?
there's also, I think,
I'm sorry.
I think, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also one other exception, if you will, on the 4th of July committee, in that we have more than 2 council members? At
Yes,
least.
that's exempt too.
Okay,
Yeah, she covered that.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's covered in this, it's E, F, G, H, and I, and that would be, E would be 3 but not more than 9 members, and F is no more than 2 council members. G is some type of knowledge in the field. H is citizens of the town of Bethany Beach, and I is not serving on more than 3 committees. So those are the ones that he would be exempt
Yeah,
from.
and that's pretty much to all the committees. You know, those same kinds of rules.
Oh, these rules apply to every other
Yeah,
committee
yeah, exactly.
except
Yeah.
4th of July.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, that's a very unique committee.
Yeah, it is unique.
Yeah.
That's why Mr. Fry is in charge.
Yes, it is. And that's why he's on a screen.
Thank you, Mayor. You're very thorough.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mr. Fry. Okay, now,
Are you going to make that as a motion and us vote on it?
oh, didn't I move it?
Yeah, we voted.
Did we vote on it? Thank you.
We can do it again if you want.
We want to do it again?
Sure.
All right, let's do it again for Mr. Morris. I move that the 4th of July Parade Committee, in order to fulfill its unique role more efficiently, be exempt from the following paragraphs of this section, sections E, F, G, H, and I. That's the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Okay,
No,
moving,
we actually didn't vote on that part. You're right. You're right. We didn't vote on that part. Yeah.
now we have, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
The
Morris.
rest of us were asleep, Mr. Morris.
Oh,
Yes. The next one is, D, is the discussion, consideration, and possible vote on the appointment of Lee Bunting to the Charter and Orders Review Committee. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kilmer. As I mentioned before at our meeting, Mr. Bunting had expressed an interest in being on a town committee, and so I had asked him if he would consider, I had an opening on the Charter and Ordinance Review Committee. We invited him to participate at our last meeting, and I think he felt comfortable. We welcomed him, and he certainly made a contribution. I sent you his background and experience in advance, and so I move that we approve the addition of Lee Bunting to the Charter and Ordinance Review Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I think Joe and I may have a problem with him having interest in the Phillies and Eagles. However, that may be offset by his interest in brew pubs and wineries. I'm all in favor of this.
I know you are. I hope you're taking this in, Lee.
The motion's been made and seconded, and obviously there's no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. The next item on the agenda, discussion, consideration, and possible vote on a recommendation to the governor to reaffirm Charles McMullen as a town alderman.
Second.
Under the Delaware Code, as of January 23rd, 2005, all judges are appointed by the governor with the consent of a majority of the members of the Delaware Senate. And this includes the alderman for Bethany Beach Alderman Court, who at the present time is our Honorable Charles McMullen. Mr. McMullen has served as alderman since 2006, and he's done a very good job for the town. He's performed his duties very well, and they were especially challenging this past summer. So I move approval of the resolution you have before you to recommend to Governor Carney that he reappoint Mr. McMullen as the Bethany Beach Alderman for another 3-year term.
Any further discussion, comments? All in favor of approving Mr. McMullen as the alternate for the town of Bethany Beach, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible vote on a contract submitted by McCormick Taylor for a flood study in the amount of $88,107. Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, council, I know many of you were on the call, the Zoom meeting we had regarding flooding, and one of the topics covered is our hope and our plan to proceed with work on a bladder dam at the mouth of the Loop Canal and the Asswoman, and a gate, a tidal gate at Fred Hudson Road as it enters Fred Hudson Road at the salt pond. As we have taken our preliminary report, the one that was just recently completed in 2020, to both the Army Corps and to DENREC, as they have reviewed it, as the Corps did in 2015, they have spoken to us about how they would like to see a two-dimensional study of the potential impacts of this project, not only as it relates to the Asswoman Canal and the area north of Fred Hudson Road, but also its possible benefit to Bethany Beach. This two-dimensional study that we're proposing here from McCormick and Taylor does that. This is a sole source contract for us. We are making it a sole source contract because of McCormick Taylor's specific expertise in this type of dam and their ability to do a two-dimensional study in a timely manner. So if anyone would like to move this forward, a motion to proceed with the contract.
Do I have a
This-
motion?
This money does sit in our existing budget in the Public Works line.
So moved.
Second. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have I have been approached by a couple people in Ocean View who are concerned about the impact of a bladder dam at the entrance of the Loop Canal, as it, from the Asswoman to the Loop Canal. One of the persons owns a business right there, and you can see where they are, that it doesn't take much for them to get flooded. And one of the concerns was, has the impact of that bladder dam been made on the impact of their business? And also, Carol Hauk, the town manager for Ocean View, was also concerned that they would like to be part of the discussion, or at least be aware of what we're trying to do and what impact it would have.
I've had that discussion with Ms. Hauk, and she's been notified that they'll be advised of any relevant information regarding Ocean View. But just on the face of it, if you want to think about it for a minute, the Asswoman Canal, the Loop Canal, Bethany Beach, is frequently subjected to tides that are 2.5 feet. Those 2.5 foot tides do not impact the property you're speaking about or anyone in Ocean View. It puts a little bit more water in their outfalls and their drainage swales, but it doesn't push back into the community. At 2.5 feet, our bladder dam will overtop, so the water level stays there. So just right with that as a basic premise, you understand, as I think I've explained to her, and you probably have explained to the gentleman you're speaking to, that this dam will not impact Ocean View.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Yes.
as part of the record, that the person has been talked to, both of them, that they've explained the impact. And I mean, I walk that every day, and there are times I can't get under the bridge at 26 because the walkway is underwater. Mm-hmm. It's a very common occurrence. Just normal tidal. I'm not even talking about a storm. Normal tidal flow. Sometimes the water is, above the sidewalks there. So
Well, a 2.5 foot increase would generally indicate a storm, though we have had more than one event here recently, John, where we've hit 2.5 feet absent storms because of moons and tides.
yes,
So,
exactly.
But
Yeah.
those don't affect, again, the property we're speaking of and/or Ocean View. So
Yes. All right. I just want the fact that we will
advise Ocean
Yeah,
View.
we have talked to them and we explained the situation.
And this report should make it very clear. Whether
Yes.
or not it's accepted, it should make it very clear.
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Mayor, I have a question, just a simple question. In Janet Connery's letter about the next finance meeting, it has a point that says $50,000 toward engineering of the bladder dam. Is that the same thing or is that something else?
That is other monies we put in for next year that we think we may need to expend as we move forward if this report is positive, with a concept and some cost estimates that we can offer to interested entities like the Corps or DENREC. So that is above this $80-some thousand.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the contract submitted by McCormick and Taylor for the flood study in the amount of $88,107. Well, before I proceed, are there any comments or questions?
No, every 20 minutes, Molly Daisy does a test, so we're up and running. We have no comments,
Okay,
Mayor.
all right, thank you, just checking.
All right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you very much, Mr. Gravier. And there are no questions or comments from the public?
No, Mayor.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
I would tell you.
Oh,
honest.
no, no.
Okay.
I just for the public
All right,
record,
all
I
right,
just want
yes.
people to know that we are monitoring that and that you're really not asleep. All right, do I have a motion? There's no more business. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fry, and thank you everyone who tuned in today.